everybody, thanks for joining me today. We're on the road. We're heading down south into south central Indiana to do a little day hike, then do a little overnight. I've got a little course that I'm taking through the Boy Scouts of America. We're doing a little wilderness first aid training. So thanks for joining me. Stick with us. Well, just made it here to the parking lot, so I'm going to go ahead and park and get my gear out. I've got a few hours to go explore a little bit, and I'll tell you a little bit more about where I am and what I'm up to. Stick with me. I'm covered in dust and dirt from a couple miles on the gravel road to get back here to the parking lot. So Charles C Deam Wilderness. So came down across the lake, came back in here to the parking lot. We're gonna jump on the trail, hike out this way a little bit, explore out towards the point a little bit, and come back, and then make our way back through. Well, hey everybody. So I've gotten on the trail. I am in part of Hoosier National Forest, just south of Lake Monroe, here in south central Indiana. So there's a little spot that has a parking lot here on the ridge. And you got to go in a couple miles on a gravel road just to get back here. So it's not real busy. But I've been interested to come out and try this trail. This one is about a 5 mile out and back each way. It's about 5 miles out, about 5 miles back. And it takes you all the way out to the point on Lake Monroe. And it's supposedly one of the most scenic spots to camp in the state. So I'm kind of excited just to see, some of the layout, get an idea of how difficult a hike it would be, carrying some gear. I've just got kind of a light day pack with me right now. So just enough to go out and make a cup of coffee and come back, and that's about it. So don't know if I've got enough time to make it all the way out and back. Probably not. But I am on Grub Ridge Trail number 212 is what it looks like according to the signs. So it's another family that I met back in the parking lot. They're out here camping for the weekend. So good for them. It's kind of nice right now. It's in the upper 40s. So I think it was 48, 49, something like that on the thermometer there at the car. And it's supposed to get down to about freezing tonight. So I've got a couple hours. I'm gonna hike out, sit down, make a cup of coffee, and then hike back in. So we'll check in a little bit. So the map that was out at the parking lot showed that here in this section of the Hoosier National Forest, as you get up towards the point, there are lots of designated, campsites and whatnot. So if you want to come in and camp here year round, it's kind of first come first serve. So that's pretty cool that it doesn't cost you anything, like the group that I met back in the parking lot. Bring the family out. You just gotta get out there. So if you can get your gear out there, first come first serve, get your spot. So I'd love to come back here a little later in the spring and do a little fishing out at the point and see how that works. So see if I can catch anything. Maybe that'll be part of dinner. That sounds like a pretty good way to spend a couple days. So it's real quiet out here. I love that it's kind of difficult to get back in here. There's a little bit of traffic on the gravel road. I think I passed 2 cars on the way in. They were going out over the couple mile distance, and then when I got to the lot, I think I saw 2 or 3 cars go by. So not a lot of traffic, but a little bit. Makes it a little difficult to get back in here. That means these trails are probably going to be pretty sparsely traveled, which is just the way I like it. Now, one thing I did notice too mentioned is this is a trail that could be shared with horses. So there was a little write-up about sharing the right of way and sharing the trail and who's got right of way and all that stuff. So don't know if I'll see any horses out here, but you never know. So this forest, this trail system is about an hour and a half south of Indianapolis. So not too far away. It's nice. You can get down here and get back during the day. And there's a lot down in this area near Brown County, just east of here. North of here, I'm always a fan of the Monroe State Forest that goes into the Yellowwood State Forest. So that's a nice little area. It's a little bit north of this section. That's where I've done some of my other videos from. But it's a very similar feel here in southern Indiana. You get some nice topography changes, some rolling hills, and you get some of these more established, hardwood forests. So there's a lot of, oak and maples, ash, although not nearly as many as there used to be. But it's really a beautiful kind of ecosystem out here. So love getting out, love being able to enjoy the elevation changes. You don't get as much of that up by Indianapolis where it's really flat. So you come down here and you definitely get some beautiful views here. Let's take a look at this. Now this first section of the trail is pretty easy. You might have a couple obstacles like that, but for the most part, this trail seems to kind of snake along the top of the ridge. So it's not until the second half of the trail, based on the maps that I saw, where I expect to get a little more elevation changes. So here they're pretty gradual up and down. I'm not doing any up and down the ravine kind of thing that you get in some of the other trails in this area. This is just kind of a nice lazy path along the top of this ridge line, and it goes for quite a ways, a couple miles like that, and it's only when you get into the last about mile and a half that you get what looks like some bigger inclines and whatnot. So there's a couple little spurs like this where it looks like they've kind of routed you around the side, but otherwise it's pretty straight. Wonder if I'll see anybody else out here tonight, other than maybe passing that family as I get out, as far as I'm going and head back to the lot. So quiet, and then you get the wind picks up just a little and starts rustling the leaves. So it goes from dead quiet to all of a sudden it sounds like there's people walking all around you. So until you get kind of settled in, it's a little spooky almost. This is cool. Looks like here's one of the first campsites. Looks like somebody put a couple seats up, had a little fire ring. You got some spots where you can definitely hang a few hammocks. So pretty basic. I'll jump back on the trail. That's got to only be, I don't know, less than a mile, I would guess, from the lot. So if you wanted to come out here and camp for free, just enjoy nature, there's a real easy way to do it. Even carrying a tent and some camping gear, if you don't have a lot of the real lightweight stuff, you can manage that distance, especially if there's a few of you. You might not bring all the biggest, bulkiest stuff that you would do when you're car camping, but you could bring a medium-sized tent, some cooking gear out, plenty of food, and be able to hike that distance pretty easy, even if it's a little heavier gear. Now, being part of the National Forest, I'll have to look this up and see, but I'd be curious if you are allowed to pretty much camp anywhere in this area. That's what I've heard. I don't know how accurate that is, of just being able to camp, anywhere back here. You find a nice level spot. I think there might be something so far off the trail you have to be so far away from a water source. So if you know those things, go ahead and comment those down below. I'll see if I can look that stuff up too. Maybe post some of that in the editing stage. So this is cool. This is up here. We go through this kind of narrow channel along the ridge. So you've got the ravines that dip down on both sides. So almost gives you the sensation that you're crossing a bridge. Here's a second campsite right off the trail. I mean, literally right off the trail. And there's not a lot of depth to it, but there's a little bit of room back there. So it's kind of a long but narrow strip, but you're right on the edge. So you get a pretty killer view of the drop off. But you also get the potential of people walking by 10 feet away from you. So I always like being a little further off the trail, feel a little more secluded. But that's a pretty cool view. So even when I'm filming, I try to keep my eyes on the trail just to be safe. Well, plus you have some of these rocks, so you can see going down this trail. If you're not quite paying attention, it's pretty easy to stub your toe, and man, I would not want to fall on those. That would require some wilderness first aid, which I'm going to pick up later tonight and tomorrow. Get that certification done. So, haven't seen anybody out here yet. It's cool, the sun's kind of coming through the trees. You know, we're a little late in the day, so even with the daylight change just a little while back, which has extended the day a little bit, I'm always a little cautious, especially on my way out, just to kind of keep an eye on the conditions. Oh, I hear some voices up ahead. Let's see what I find. Looked like it was a group of maybe 8, some adults and some kids. I don't know if it was just a family thing, but it looked like multiple families, or it could have been a scouting group. It was up off of one of the campsites back there, so didn't really get a good look at the campsite. They were back a little ways, but you could hear them talking. So just kind of made my way past. Onward. See what we find. It's pretty cool. Love exploring new trails, blazing new paths. This is definitely one. Oh, this looks like could be some hoof marks through this section. So, and some horses came through here not too long ago. But this is definitely one that so far I really enjoy, and we'll have to add to the list to come back and do some camping. Tonight sounds just about perfect. I love those crisp nights where you want to build a fire, you know, and sit by it, because it's kind of cold when you're not. I always enjoy those campfires a little bit more than the ones where you're doing in the middle of August or July, when, oh good God, it's so hot you don't want to sit next to the fire. It's nice to look at, but you're not doing it for warmth. But there's something about doing it in the fall and early in the spring when it's still really crisp. Just feels like campfire weather. Well, it looks like the forest is changing a little bit up here. Looks like there's some pine. Maybe some white pine. Take a look as I get a little bit closer. We're changing from all hardwoods to a little grove of evergreen. You can see the hardwoods back behind me. And then you get this grove of the evergreens up here. You get these wonderful views. I mean, we're up along the ridge this whole way so far. And so you go at a spot where it's kind of level, and then you go through a spot where you feel like you're on a bridge and it just falls away on both sides. And if you can look through the trees way down there, you can actually see the reservoir. Lake Monroe's back that way, so we're getting a little closer. Onward. It's warming up a little bit. Had to strip down one layer. Don't really want to start sweating, but it's definitely heating up. Here's another one of those pine groves. Lots of pine cones through here too. There's a little breeze today, which is nice. Kind of hear it rustling through the leaves here before we get into this section of pine. But that's definitely one thing I've noticed about the campsites, is they're all way up on the top of the ridge. There haven't been many dips. So I prefer to not sleep on the bottom of any of the ravines or gullies, or right at the top, just because of wind, or moisture at the bottoms. So this one might not be such a bad area, just because pine will give you a little bit of break from the wind a little bit, even this time of year before the leaves come out. But I'd still much rather find a spot maybe further along, or even out to the point. I think those might be the best, most scenic, where you get out there and maybe have the sunrise or the sunset over the water. That would be pretty epic. You can see one of the trees has actually snapped off pretty close to the base, and it's coming back towards the trail. It got caught up on one of its brethren, but you get a big windstorm, something like that. There's a couple of them like that that are leaning. Some that are completely dead. Those would come down in a hurry. Don't want to be anywhere near those, but a decent amount of firewood, although this stuff's not really the best. I'd rather get some good solid hardwood that'll burn a lot longer, a lot hotter. This stuff you can usually get lit pretty quickly, but you go through it so quick. So when you're collecting, you need to get a lot more of it. And it's up ahead. There's like 2 or 3 trees leaning across the trail that look pretty much dead. At least those 2 are. Well, I think I'm gonna have to turn back. That's what's in front of me, but just based on time, I hiked a little further so I could enjoy a little bit more of the trail time. but I'm gonna cut out, sitting down and making a cup of coffee. I'll save that until tonight by the campfire. But I want to give myself enough time to get back, and then I've got to drive all the way down that gravel road to make it out to the main road, and then we're going down a few miles to Camp Ransburg, which is here on the south side of the lake as well. It's a scout property, and that's where the wilderness first aid course is being taught. So I want to make sure I have enough time to get over there and make it there with some time to spare for before check-in starts. Don't want to be late, so rather be a little early. So I think I've given myself enough time to get all the way back and then drive all the way over. It'll take me a little while to get there, even though the distance isn't real far. But it's just some hiking, and then that gravel road, you're not going more than 15 or 20 miles an hour tops, if that. It's a little windy, and traction's not wonderful. So I think it's time to head on back down the trail and head back to the parking lot. I thought that might be a campsite back here. Sure enough, it is. This one's in one of those pine groves, and it's a little ways back. There's some downed trees. Somebody even was leaving their water out here. Looks like over here, I don't know if you can see it on the camera. Somebody left a ridge line up. Two on the inside, one on the outside. Knot. Who knows what kind of knot that is? Two loops on the inside, one loop on the outside. So, nice little fire ring here. This isn't a bad one. You'd have a little bit of protection from the wind, at least from the west and south. You'd be a little more open to get some wind from the north. But one thing I don't like about being in here, though, is there are a lot of dead trees that you have to look out for. And some of those, obviously there's some that are down. But there's one like that one that goes up and caught on that tree, and well, it's definitely making it to the fire ring if that thing comes down. So you want to be somewhere other than that. And then there's one down past that ridge line. That's a pretty tall pine too that's dead, that you'd have to watch out for that. So yeah, there's a lot of these kind of juveniles in here that haven't made it to full maturity and have kind of withered. So I think it's time to get back on the trail. Well, I've definitely picked up the pace on the way back, just to make sure I get back. So I have an event, a little bit of heat as the body temperature rises a little bit. Temperature's still really comfortable outside. It's got to be in the still mid to upper 40s, but the sun's still coming through the trees pretty strong. So I can definitely tell heart rate's up a little bit as I've kind of quickened the pace. And I may go a few more minutes and have to shed this button down just to, again, regulate my temperature a little bit. I don't want to be sweating out here much. and it'll be real cold tonight. So normally I would either slow down or you gotta vent. So I'm gonna vent some heat a little bit. Well, had to use that shirt. Again, just getting too warm. So I'm hoofing out of here. I've only seen one couple heading out to the point. Young couple, probably about 30, 25, 20, 28, somewhere in there. So they were backpacking out. Definitely doing an overnight. A little jealous. That sounds like a lot of fun. The idea of just being out here for long, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, go home. That sounds about perfect. Be fun to do this with a group. See if I can talk some folks into going with me. Want to go? Yeah, I think that'd be a load of fun just to spend a weekend, just stay out there the whole time. That'd be pretty awesome. So we'll have to schedule a time where I've got all afternoon where I could make that hike out and back if I actually want to scout those final campsites out there out at the point. Or just bite the bullet and plan a weekend and go out there, even with a little bit of the unknown. So, I've already backtracked now to that second campsite that was pretty narrow, but has a nice view up here of that ridge falling down that side. So, one more campsite. It's up a little ways, and then there's that stretch to the parking lot, so it's not too much further. It's got to be probably just under a mile from here, would be my guess. Well, we're getting close. There's not too far to go. Starting to recognize some things that I saw right at the beginning of the hike. So looks like that total round trip for me was probably an hour, 20 minutes or so. Maybe a little more than that. Maybe an hour and a half that I got in on the hike. So, more than a few miles. And I got close enough out there that you could see the lake off in the distance. I think the trail still kind of snakes along the shoreline there and then jets out that final point where the bulk of the campsites are. So even though I could see the water off in the distance and it might only be a mile away or so, there had to be at least another, 2 miles maybe. That's just a guess though. Maybe I was closer than I know till I do the whole thing. It's kind of hard to know for sure. Well, wasn't quite as close as I thought. I just went back and looked at some of the film I shot and pictures I took at the very beginning. Figured out the time. I hiked about just under an hour to get out there to where I was. and a kind of leisurely pace. And my pace is definitely quickened on the way back, but I'm right now only at just coming up on 40 minutes. So 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, when I thought, I must be right up around the corner. No, another 10, 15 minutes. So I can actually see the road over the next ridge. So I am just finally getting to the end. Woohoo! Well, thanks for joining me today on this little day hike here in the Hoosier National Forest. Appreciate all your support. Like, comment, subscribe, share. I appreciate all the support. We'll see you next time. Be well. Ah.